Yo, what's up? This is Splendid Radio on Pharcyde TV. My co-host Jeremy Scipio had to hit a comedy stage tonight, but I'm here with a very old friend. Happened to meet him through some pretty obscure circumstances quite some time ago. But
Yeah,
we have Mr. John. Pronounce your name correctly.
Fahnestock.
All right, Fahnestock. And
Yeah.
the funny thing about it, when I met you, I saw you were into bands and stuff like that or whatever, but that wasn't like the catalyst of kind of how we clicked or whatever. And so it wasn't until later that I realized I was like, he's done a couple of things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and the same with yourself also, Greg, I believe we met talking about printing actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sublimation printing, which is something I've done for well like 2 decades now, and you were asking me some questions. I don't know how we actually crossed paths, initially the
Horizon.
time.
It was Horizon.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
It was, and shout out to Bob, man. He's
Is he
still doing
really?
it.
Is he really?
He's still, it's so funny. I went to a trade show um a year ago, and I was outside and I saw this guy sitting down on a bench, and he's older dude or whatever. And I went over to him, and his memory's still kind of like, he's in his 80s for sure. So his memory's still kind of like, shaky or whatever. He'll never recognize me by face, but then when I say Campbell, he'll come, oh, great Campbell. And I'm like, yeah.
Ah.
But yeah, no, he's still doing this thing. They moved, still in Gardena. So
Okay.
yeah, so one of the things about me when I'm trying to like hound dog a technique, I just take it as far as I can take it. So I want to say at that time, Horizon was doing trade shows, and I met those guys at a trade show, and then I came to them with a sample, and I was like, man, I got to figure out how to do this. I got this idea. I'm trying to get this thing going. Da 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 da. And they're like,
Yeah.
you know what? We can't do that, but we know a guy that can. And then they pointed
Yeah.
me in your direction. And so,
Oh, no shit. Yeah, that's how it went down.
yeah, yeah, nah, that
Well,
was,
that's good to hear he's still around because at one point he kind of took me under his wing, and he kind of was like a father figure to me for a couple of years. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm glad that he's still on this earth and breathing. Yeah.
you know what? I'll say, uh, you're the reason I'm in the wide format print. I wide format print now. Like, like you exposing me to the whole sticker game and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that lit my fire. Like that's dude. If you show me something and I see that it can be some money made, I'm on it, man. I mean,
Right, right.
oh yeah, I'm all over metallic stickers now, so that's like my other thing. But hopping into the podcast, man. Uh, I know you're rock, I know you're punk, I know you're all that stuff, but
Mhm.
like I said, we got Jeremy. He's not here with us tonight, but he's the comedy side of it. I'm kind of like the hip hop side, and then we meet somewhere in the middle. But
Mhm.
did you ever think hip hop would be as large as it is?
Honestly, not really. Yeah. You know,
Nah.
I grew up. I kind of fell into the hip hop thing maybe in the '80s at one point. And if my influences go way back. I think I started really getting into the scene as far as that because at the time I was like, obviously I grew up a lot on punk rock and the British heavy metal invasion, so to speak. And then, there was that time where it kind of started crossing over, and what I really liked, I think one of the very first early bands I remember was Public Enemy. I liked the message. They kind of had that punk attitude about them, and they just stood out to me. So they were one of my very first, things that influenced me as far as that genre of music was definitely them.
That's dope. Yeah, nah, that's real dope. So
Uh,
the first hip hop song you can remember hearing.
Sheesh. It was either well, if it's like strictly hip hop, there was that crossover thing when Run DMC did that thing
Yeah.
with Aerosmith.
Yeah.
and that kind of like sparked the thing where you want to like see what that whole other thing was about, you know. And it was either, like I said, Public Enemy, LL Cool J, and then I was a big Beastie Boys fan.
Okay.
Big, big time. Yeah.
You know, from a marketing standpoint, and it's so funny because I thought that you were going to say that, or for whatever reason, my mind was thinking MTV just because we're kind of in the same age range or whatever. And I was like,
Right.
man, whoever put Run DMC together with Aerosmith, dude, that was so genius, man. That was like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that opened Aerosmith up to a whole nother level, a whole nother fan base, as well as Run DMC. And they both kind of just rode that whole MTV thing when, there weren't that many bands on MTV back then. You know what I'm saying?
No,
There
I
was,
mean, yeah, there was a handful, and obviously that track that they did was like it was on every hour. It was like they
yeah.
didn't have much to go to. They went to that, and they pumped that shit all the time, dude. Yeah.
So I'm gonna hit you with the last hip hop question,
Okay.
and this is gonna be a good one. And it's very loose. The criteria of it is just very loose. But your favorite hip hop movie?
Crush Group.
Oh, all right. I'm learning more about
Yeah. I
John.
mean, you had Rick Rubin in there, early Rick Rubin. You know,
Okay.
what'd you have, like Fat Boys in there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
I,
okay.
I've watched that movie at least a dozen times in my lifetime. Yeah.
Okay. That's yeah. That's pretty dope. Okay. I did not think we'd come with that one. So with that being said,
Uh-huh.
what city are you from?
I'm originally from a little small town in Pennsylvania called Chambersburg.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so from Chambersburg, you transitioned to
I transitioned to Santa Barbara, California, believe it or not. Yeah. And it was all from one call from my very best friend, Shannon Larkin, who at the time was playing drums in a band called Ugly Kid Joe. And Shannon and I grew up on the East Coast, and we played in some punk bands together, when we were like 16, 17, 18 years old. So he went out west and he's like, bro, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to find you a band. I'm going to give you a call one day. And it happened. And he got with Mikey and Lynn. And one night the phone rang in PA and they said, hey, we want you to play bass in this band called Snot. And 2 weeks later, I was there, just like that.
dang,
Yeah.
dang. That's dope. Santa Barbara is one of those really beautiful places, man. It's one of
Uh,
those really, you
man.
know, uh up north. See, Santa Barbara's cool to me because it's not so far up north. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's about 2 hours from the South Bay, maybe.
Sure is. I
Yeah,
did the trip many times.
there. And then I also enjoy Santa Cruz a lot.
Oh, that's my second favorite place.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, just something about Santa Cruz. It's always been magical. And honestly, before I moved where I live now, which is in Colorado, um, that's where I wanted to move, Santa Cruz. But I couldn't afford it, man. Just couldn't afford it.
Well, I'll say this. The last place you lived, to my knowledge, before you moved out to Colorado, man, that was dope to me, man. And
Mhm.
it's so funny because I had never been to the Korean Bell. I actually kind of discovered it going up to your house, but I'd seen it in a million movies. Like it's in a million movies. And when I explain it
Right?
to people, I say, whenever the gangsters get together and they're
Yeah,
having,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I think Battle for LA, which was like when the military was shooting at stuff in the sky.
yeah,
Google that shit. But that was like right at the Korean Bell because they had like bunkers there and shit, and they thought there was UFOs flying, and they were like shooting in the sky at some shit, and that's like legendary too, right there. And I literally lived on 38th Street, and it's in San Pedro, South Bay, California, and Korean Bell was right down to my street. That was all there. I walk
Oh
up there
yeah.
every day or cruise that place, you know. Yeah.
When I wanna show off a cool spot, and it's so funny because Brown, he'd always remind me. He'd say, "Man, you drive all over the city and you're going to LA and all this." He's like, "Dude, you got a whole nother world in your backyard, man. You're not even tripping on." And it's funny because as a matter of fact, I had my birthday was yesterday, and I had dinner at the Red Onion in Palos
Oh,
Verdes.
oh
and
shit. Yeah.
I was like, man, I do have some cool stuff a couple minutes away from the house. I'm like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because people ask me, they say, you're well traveled, you've been all over the place, like where's your favorite place, like where do you like to be? And for years I would say Brazil. Like for years I had an affinity for Sao Paulo. I used to just go down there, and at the time when I was going, I could go on a $1,200 budget and come back with like $300 in my pocket, stay for a week, eat great, hang out.
Damn.
I had a friend down there though. He would drive me around,
Uh-huh.
and I'd give him a couple dollars or whatever. But and that's before Snoop and Pharrell went and just turned the Brazil experience into something totally different. Man, they kind of threw a
Yeah.
threw a spotlight on it, and it just kind of all switched up after that. But I used to say Brazil, but honestly, man, I love the South Bay, dude. And it's so funny. Anybody that'll listen to me, I'll tell them, when you look up at the hills during the daytime, if you didn't know you were in the South Bay and you just took a picture, it looks like Hawaii. You know, up,
Right.
yeah, up in those hills. And so, yeah, I love the South Bay.
And you know what else too? Obviously, in that area, they shoot a lot of movies, but they pretend they're somewhere else. They always pretend they're in San Francisco.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
because they
hills. Yeah.
shoot all over San Pedro, and we had all those hills and shit. And all of a sudden they're in Frisco, and then the next minute I'm like, that's San Pedro, man.
Dope. So, junior high school, what was your soundtrack?
My gosh, probably I started off with the British heavy metal invasion. I was Judas Priest, Scorpions, um, Saxon. I've always been into British music, even more so than American music. I always have these debates with friends. I'm like, who has the most popular bands ever? And is it England or is it America? So we always battle back and forth. But I always think that English always had more of a music influence, definitely from where I was from and what I was into at the time. And then I slowly transitioned to the whole punk rock scene with like Dead Kennedys, the Bad Brains. I was on
Yeah.
the East Coast, so that all crazy shit like Minor Threat, that whole thing,
Yeah.
yeah, Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags, that whole scene. And then obviously the Ramones from New York City, they were all big influences with me.
So, I came up like listening to punk rock probably about the age of 12, 13, Minor Threat, DRI.
Yeah,
Uh,
DRI.
yep, all these bands. And there was a club uh right over the bridge in Long Beach called Fenders. And
Yep,
I
that's
saw
fucking legendary.
so many bands there, man. So
That's a
Fenders Ballroom.
legendary. Yeah.
I remember there was a show and Angelo climbed up on a beam. He climbed up on a beam, man. And I want to say he fell, but they caught him. they caught him. And I just remember being a young dude just saying, damn, this punk rock shit. This is some whole other and then Sky, just all over
Yeah.
back. I ended up being in Ireland on St. Patrick's Day, and I got to see the English Beat.
Damn.
But this was later. This was in the 2000s though. It was
Okay.
the Rankin Roger version, not the Dave Shanklin version. It was the Rankin Roger version, and it was a trip. He was the coolest dude in the world, man. He was the coolest dude in the world. Gave me his number, gave me his email address. We talked about music, and I was going to try to hook him up with some people and try to see what could go on. And when he passed, man, it was a great loss, man. It was a great loss. Like the English beat was my junior high school experience.
Wow. Yeah.
That was in general public and all those kind of groups. And so it was kind of where I lived. So I've always lived in Harbor City. And so it was kind of like the punks and the ska guys were kind of like cool. The metal guys were around, but the punks and the ska guys were very close, like closely woven together. So I just got educated on a bunch of ska bands. And I didn't realize it at the time, and I know you might not be in the ska that much or whatever, but the Untouchables were in San Diego. I never knew that. Like I never,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
I never knew they were that close. So, when did you start playing the bass?
I would think it was in 86, definitely by 87, 1987. And I originally was a guitar player. I played professionally in bands on the East Coast, and we called it the tri-state area. And back then we played covers, So it was like 3 cover sets a night, like 3-hour sets, like 1 hour, another hour. You take a break, come out, play another hour, take a break, come out. Third hour, played like 1, 2 in the morning, And I ripped a lead guitar back then, had the whammy bar like Eddie Van Halen, was doing all that crazy shit, And I was really into Randy Rhoads. And then when Randy Rhoads died, it kind of fucking really hurt me, And I was just, I don't know. I was looking for something different. And I was hanging with Shannon back then. Shannon Larkin again. He's been with me my whole life. And he's like, yo, I got this punk band and I need a bass player and you should play the bass, is what he told me. And I said, man, I don't want to play the bass. He goes, you look like a bass player. I think you should play the bass. So I was like, all right. So I had a friend in school, and he was going into the Marines, and I knew he had a bass guitar, and I knew he was taking off to military. So I said, hey, can I borrow your bass guitar? I think I'm gonna play the bass now, So he's like, sure, And then before you know it, 2 weeks later, I was in a DC recording studio. I was making my first recording as an actual professional bass player.
Dope.
Mm-hmm.
So, senior year in high school.
Yes.
What did you think you were going to do once you graduate?
I was mindset that I was going to be a rock and roller. I made that up in 1980. Actually, I went to see my first big concert was AC/DC. It was the Back in Black tour at the Philadelphia Spectrum. I'll never forget. And that night, I had a wave of chills come over my body, and my brain was like, "This is it. That's what you're gonna do." And I was just fucking gung ho mindset. I mean, I was so mindset that I wanted to quit high school. I didn't want to. I just wanted to. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I did. I was beating on books in the school, driving people fucking nuts. I was just like, get me out of here, man. I need to hit that stage.
That's how hip hop came, and it just took over, man. It was just like man, people, it was like religion, man. People, it brought people together.
Yeah.
We're diehard purists, and all that kind of stuff. Something crazy about Pennsylvania that I didn't know. I went to Pennsylvania maybe around 2003, and I want to say somebody told me a pretty obscure story about chocolate. And
Oh.
I want to say Hershey's may
Yep.
have come. Yep, Hershey's may have come from there or something like that. But that was just like
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's where I went a lot when I was a kid. They had Hershey Park. So it's a big amusement park, and it's been there since gosh, I don't know exactly when, but I knew I was going to Hershey Park in the 70s when I was a real little boy, you know. It had the first, called the Super Duper Looper. It's the first roller coaster to do a complete loop, all that crazy shit. You took a tour of the chocolate factory where you rode in these little carts and you seen chocolate being made and shit like that. But yeah, I know all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never got into a cheesesteak though. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
that's Philadelphia, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, my geography's crazy. You know what I'm saying? I know the South Bay. Basically.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what that is. So after high school, how did you get into new metal?
Hmm. Well, new metal, the term new metal,
Mm-hmm.
it was well after high school. It was pretty much around the time it was Snot. I
Okay.
would say, I moved to Santa Barbara in '95, and that whole scene was just coming up then. I think the first week or two I was out there, Lynn took me to see Korn, took me to see Deftones. They were all baby bands then. They were playing, but you knew they were on to something, something different, something new, and we started putting Snot together, and we've been coined new metal. Honestly, I never liked being coined or being considered new metal, and I have reasons why. And honestly, it's like we didn't have a DJ, we didn't tune down the A. We really didn't do the rap thing, which that was those three elements was really a lot to do with new metal. And then anytime we were writing that Snot album, we played something and it sounded like Korn or something like new metal, we instantly threw the riff in the trash. We were like, that sounds like new metal. So we would we tried to do our own thing really at the time, but obviously we came up in that genre and we've been coined new metal also. But a lot of our fans are really digging to us. They're like, Snot was not new metal, they were more than that. They were more punk and hardcore because Lynn came from that whole scene, No Effects, RKL, um, Bad Religion, who actually Jamie, our drummer in Snot, is the drummer of Bad Religion now. It's crazy how
Oh wow.
that whole thing went, because that was Lynn's favorite band, Bad Religion. And then Lynn passed, and Jamie's been in Bad Religion for well over a decade now. But yeah, Lynn be rolling his grave. He knew that shit. Yeah, dude.
That's interesting because so would you consider Limp Bizkit new metal?
Yeah, yeah, for
Okay, so
sure.
it was just basically the heavy metal with kind of a little hip hop edge to it. And okay,
Yeah,
all
and
right,
then
I
they
get it.
they they would all tune like way down, like the strings are like flapping on the guitar, like really down tuning to like A. And then,
Okay.
but we didn't do that, man. We didn't do it. We didn't do any of that. I didn't play a 5 string. We didn't have samples. We didn't have a DJ. But
You
whatever.
didn't have any of the three elements that would classify somebody as new metal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we wore the big baggy, jeans and the shorts, the long shorts, they're down to your ankles back then. I mean, but we dressed in that genre, so to speak. But yeah.
All right. So now tell us the story of Snot.
It's a long story, even though we were a very short-lived band. But um, it all really started when Mikey Doling, the guitar player, he was in Santa Barbara, and he was playing thrash metal at the time, and he wanted to do something different. So he got like a Porta-4 track. He started like demoing some stuff, and he was going around Santa Barbara saying, "I got a band," and everybody's like, "What's your band's name?" And he called it Snot then, and it really wasn't even a band. He was just trying to get attention. And Lynn was in this punk band at the time, and he was singing up in Isla Vista. And Mikey recalled that Lynn was there and was like this pizza fucking place. They served pizza and had bands. And Lynn dived on the table while people were eating pizza, and glass flew everywhere, pizza everywhere. And he was kicking his feet up in the air. And Mikey's like, who the fuck's that crazy guy? And he's like, that's my singer. So he went to Lynn after that show, and he got Lynn, you know, and then they started putting the real Snot together, you know, and then they hung out with Shannon Larkin a lot, and they were watching football on a Sunday, and they were like, "Hey, Shannon, do you know anybody? We need a bass player." And Shannon put in a VHS tape back then. He said, "This is my boy, you know, John. My nickname was Toomer, and he's on the East Coast. He was been in my bands. You should check him out." And they put it in, and they were like, "Can we give him a call?" And they called me up, and I flew out there, and I relocated, and then I was like, you know, let's get serious about this. You know, I kind of put the fire under them more, you know, because I don't want to move out there just to goof off. You know, I'm like, let's get signed, let's get more serious. So we started getting serious, and then one by one, I'm like, you know, we need to bring Sonny Mayo out here. He was another guitar player who was in a band with me and Shannon. I go, he needs to be our second guitar player. He came out, and then all of a sudden we're like, man, we need the drummer. And I said, Jamie Miller, who also played with me back on the East Coast. I go, that's our drummer. We need to get him. He flew out, and the rest was history. We went down to LA. We started looking for management, and we hooked up with Nick Adler, Lou Adler's
Okay. Yeah.
legendary Lou Adler. And then Nick, at the time, his dad had him running the Roxy,
Yeah.
and booking the Roxy. Nick was up in the booking room, and since he was our manager, we were on that Roxy stage before he knew it. We were playing with Cold Chamber, Manhole, early System of a Down was around the time, and we started drawing, and before you know it, we sold the Roxy out. It's just selling it out. Record labels came in. We had our own pick, and we went with Geffen. We went with Geffen Records, and at the time, Geffen had like Nirvana, they had White Zombie, they had Weezer, they had Sonic Youth, they had a lot of fucking cool bands, Rollins Band, all that shit. It just felt like home, you know. We went into Ed Rosenblatt, who was the running Geffen at the time. We went to his office. Behind him, he had this painting of Butterfly Beach, which is in Santa Barbara. It was behind his desk. And we knew when we went in his office, we was like, holy shit, it's Butterfly Beach. We're like, oh, man, this is done deal. Like, we're signing the Geffen.
So on Geffen, they never tried to push you guys in the direction of new metal and all that kind of stuff, because Geffen had a little something, little hip hop straying throughout
Well, you know who they had and we never was signed through A&R. We never really had an A&R agent, but we were appointed A&R agent, and Marvin Mack was our agent, and he was responsible for the Roots, I believe, at the time. Yeah. Okay. And the Fugees and that whole scene and all that. And then as time went on, we kind of went from Marvin Mack to while we're making the record, we were appointed another A&R, Wendy Goldstein. She didn't know anything about us. She flew out when we were making the record, and she walked in the control booth, and she heard "I Just Lie," and everybody knows that song. It's just like, "I just lie, just to fuck you, I just lie," and it's just like Lynn's rant on women and shit. And she just was like, her jaw dropped. She was just like, she walked out of the room. You're like, damn, I don't know if she likes what we're doing. They let us still continue. There was there was nobody at all during that process of writing Get Some that were like, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. We think you should be more this way. We were totally free for all. Honestly, it felt a lot like we were producing it ourselves, but we also brought in Todd Ray. T Ray is known by then, and he wrote a lot of hip hop beats for a lot of major hip hop artists at the time. So he was brought in as our producer. But one of the reasons why we picked him, because he just did a band called Helmet, and Helmet was doing that. Was pretty big on that scene, doing the down-tuned guitars and the no leads and stuff at the time. They had an album called Betty that he just did, and I really liked that a lot. So we went with T Ray. We brought him in. and we recorded the album in North Brookfield, Massachusetts, and at a place called the Farm, and it had big history there. Like they had pictures of Rolling Stones were there at one time. Aerosmith, Steven Tyler hung out there. They had like it was a barn. He actually had horses there. We lived in this barn during the whole album process, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And we just had a blast. I think we lived there for like 4 weeks. We all had our own room in the farm, and we had our own cook us meals and shit. And then from there we went to Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, to do the mix right after the record. And I found this guy named Phil Nicolo, and his other Phil did all the rock and roll, but his brother, who was like a twin, did all hip hop. And before you know it, we were in the studio where the Fugees and the Roots and all of them did their shit. That's where we mixed Get Some. And they were called the Butcher Brothers, Phil and his brother. Like, I don't know his brother's name, but that's who mixed the album. And to this day, the album stands the test of time. I've met people all over the world that use it to tune their PA systems, sound men. Like sonically, the way that album came together it's unbelievable. It really sounded fucking great, and I'm still proud of this day how it sounded. And pretty much that's how the whole Snot thing happened, bringing me from PA to Santa Barbara, going down to LA, kicking ass, going back east to record the album, not doing it in LA where most people would think, we would have done the album in LA, but I think the reason we got it far away is just to concentrate more on it, because we probably would have been more corrupted, so to speak, to do the album in LA. Lynn would have been running off.
Come on, he would have been all up and down those Hollywood streets, man,
doing
hanging
his
out.
thing, chasing girls everywhere, But not to say he didn't do that. He was pulling women in North Brookfield, Massachusetts. He'd come back with a girl. Be like, "Where'd you find her?" He's like, "She was on some porch I was driving by." I mean, like, bro, what are you doing? It's like, that was crazy like that.
Hollywood is an interesting place.
Yeah.
I was there. I kind of crashed on the couch maybe around 92-ish for about 5 or 6 months, between 91 92, 5 or 6 months. And it's an interesting place because you have actors, you have musicians, you have like all these creative people. And in the 90s, it was so small. Like, I can remember going to a party. I went to this party before Wesley Snipes had blew up. Like, he was small. And oh man, what's homeboy's name? At this party, you had Wesley Snipes, you had Doogie Howser, you had the guys from The White Shadow. You had you had all these actors, old and young actors.
Yeah.
It was like in an apartment though. Like no one had like super made it to where like Wesley wasn't balling. Like nobody was balling. And it was one of those things of where it was around the corner from Hollywood High. And I don't know who told me about it, but I was like, why not? It's walking distance from where I was living at the time. So I walked
Yeah.
over there. But at that time, like the 90s, early 90s, Hollywood was just this creative. Matter of fact, where I was staying at, Paul Mooney and his wife had a health food store around the corner. And it was like it was sandwiches and smoothies, like way before Jamba Juice had kind of like jumped off, and that was kind of like their thing. But
right, yeah.
That was the PG to slightly rated R version of Hollywood. But I'm sure you guys and Lynn probably saw the quadruple X, the wild, the wild.
The only thing I never witnessed, and I never witnessed the whole like the 80s Sunset Strip, because that shit was jumping off too back then, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, you had fucking Van Halen, you had Motley Crue running around, and that was just complete debauchery, I'm sure.
I never. The craziest thing I saw in Hollywood well, no, this was the craziest, but I'll say something that was kind of dope to me. There was this club called Hollywood Live, and Ice T up like Ice T would hang out there. They had a he had a club called Water the Bush that was upstairs, and he'd have like all kind of guys. And I remember being on the steps going into waiting to get into the club Hollywood Live, and I want to say it was like Flavor Flav and maybe Big Daddy Kane, and they had like I'm sure they were rented, but they were convertible. They were in convertible Benzes, and they were like kind of, back then there was no social media, so when you saw somebody, it was like all the oohs and ahs, and they were like
Yeah.
driving back and forth in front of the club, and we are just like, damn, Flavor Flav, Big Daddy Kane. That was like a real big deal then. So, on with the story of Snot. Tell us about Dobbs.
All right. Dobbs was kind of like the band mascot, you know. He was a boxer. He was Lynn's dog, and Lynn took him fucking everywhere. I mean, he'd go in stores with him, bring him in the clubs, you know. Lynn went everywhere with Dobbs, and Dobbs even came to Longview, Massachusetts, and was with us there the whole time. But the story of Dobbs was, I think there was some junkies in Santa Barbara, and they were breeding boxers. And Lynn at the time, he fully like gangstered him, and he came in and he fucking took all the dogs, said "fuck you," and took them all, and he kept one of the pups. Took him from the junkies, and he kept Dobbs, and that was his dog. And I taught Dobbs a little trick when we all lived together. We had this lemon tree in the front yard, and Dobbs would go out this lemon tree and he'd try to shake a branch to a damn lemon would drop. And he'd get this lemon in his mouth. He looked like a boxer with a mouthpiece. And he'd come in the house, you know, with the lemon in his mouth. He'd be all like, and we'd play with the lemon. So I taught him how to bounce the lemon on his fucking nose. And I would give him a command, and he'd sit there. He wouldn't move an inch. And I give him a command. Actually, it's funny is the commands from the movie The Deer Hunter. Anybody knows the movie The Deer Hunter? And it was that scene when they're doing Russian roulette, and the Viet Cong were like "Mao," they would say, and I think it means now, like pull the trigger. Well, that was the command to keep the lemon on his nose. So I would put the lemon on there. I'd be like "Mao, Mao," and he'd keep it on his nose like that. And then I would say, "Get a boy." And as soon as I said that, he would drop the lemon and it would roll over his nose. He'd catch it in his mouth.
Nah.
And then I was sitting around one day and I'm like, that should be our fucking album cover. And I told the rest of the guys that, and they went along with it. So we brought in a photographer in the front yard underneath the lemon tree. And that's where we shot the photograph for the album cover with the lemon. A lot of people think it's a tennis ball, but it's a lemon. Yeah.
I thought it was a tennis ball.
Right? All right. There you go.
But it was, the interesting thing to me, because as I did my research on Snot, there was just as many people that missed Dobbs as Lynn. You know what I'm saying? Like Dobbs was like he was a rock and roll icon, in his own right.
He was, and it's sad, but it's kind of very ironic that they both died together in that car accident. They both went out together. It's sad, but I really think if Lynn would have passed away and Dobbs would have just, he loved Lynn, and Lynn loved Dobbs, man, and I really think it was meant to be that they both went out like that together.
Man.
Yeah.
So after Lynn had passed away, you guys did a tribute album.
Yep.
Tell us
Tell
us about Straight Up.
Well, at the time there was no social media, there still wasn't no cell phones unless you had a lot of fucking money, carried that big brick around. you know.
I
Um,
have one.
and my manager had one in his car. We always Lynn was like, "Can I use the phone?" Anyways, um, yeah, I was like, we were all devastated and we were very sad, and I was like, we got to do something, man. We got to do something in the memory of Lynn. And I said, why don't we take we were writing songs when he died for our second record. And I'm like, we got to do something with this music. And I'm like, Lynn was loved by so many people, and so many people that came up in that whole new metal or the whole scene at the time. And I'm like, why don't we get um, everybody come sing on a song? And we started passing it around. Like, what do you think? What do you think? And honestly, there was a lot of doubt at the time, especially from the industry. They're like, oh, it can't be done. There's too much red tape. You can't, there's too many people's not going to want to take, Jonathan from Korn. People's not going to want to take, like Brandon from Incubus. They like, it can't be done. And I'm like, fuck this. This is going to happen. I'm like, I made a little flyer coming soon, and we took, and straight up is a catchphrase. And since Lynn Straight was his last name, I was like, and we know he's like, he's pointing in that one photo, he's pointing to the sky and it's coming from the album, he's pointing up in the air. And I'm just like, straight up. That's it. That's what we're going to call this project. And we didn't give up, man. We kept going around, and it really had nothing to do in the beginning with record labels saying yay or nay. It was actually our friends and the singers that were like, "Fuck yeah, I'll do this." They're like, "Fuck my label, I'm gonna fucking be there for you." And one by one, we wrote a list of people who we wanted, and we pretty much got everybody, that
I'm gonna
that that we felt that deserved to sing on that album and be part of it. Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you where you guys were light years ahead of just so much when you made that album. So, you know, managers cock block, the label cock blocks, and honestly, a lot of the time, it has nothing to do with the artist. It's just kind of them wanting to have control, and the label having a vision of how they want the the artist or the bands to be seen, and what
Yeah.
light or whatever. And you guys just kind of gangstered around all of it and just went up to people that you knew would be down, and you just got people to be down, and made
Yeah.
a masterpiece. That's dope.
Thank you. I mean, there still was, there were still issues, at the time. They were dropping a single, and we really wanted to push that song that Brandon sang, and they were like, "You can't. We're focusing on Incubus now. We're focusing on their single," and that happened. But we were all close with Lejean and the guys from Seven Dust were one of our closest friends, and that's how that song "Angel Sun" came about, and it actually became one of Seven Dust's biggest songs that they ever had. But actually, it was so big for them that they re-recorded it again. But I wasn't on the second one, and neither was Mikey. But they redid it over again because their label was like, "You need to redo this again," and they brought in like a symphony. And honestly, I prefer the original to what when they redid it again. But yeah, it was a big song from them. It still is every time they play, and it touches a lot of people in the heart. If you lost somebody in your life, that's basically what that song is about.
Nah, that's dope. And once again, you come from an era where, man, there wasn't the social media, was the magazines, man. That was and a show and going and showing up at a show. You didn't know who your favorite musician, you didn't know what he liked to eat, you didn't know what he liked to watch on TV. It was none of that. Everything was kind of like this somewhat of a mystery, which now you know, we know too much about people, man. I think that
Right?
that
Yeah.
really takes away from the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it's
It,
leveled the playing field, uh, in a way where it's like almost, I won't say anyone can be a star, but anyone can be a musician. You know,
yeah.
and it's
It
just
it's taken the magic out of things. It's taken the mysterious, like you said, everybody knows everything about everybody now, and people's attention span is not what it used to be. You know what I
Man.
mean? Yeah, if I could go back in time, I would get rid of my cell phone again.
Ah.
I miss the simpler times like then.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't I wouldn't go back that far. I wouldn't take it that far.
I
But I will say I really miss the anticipation of getting an album, whether it was a CD or whether it was wax, and reading the liner notes, like looking at it to see who produced, who mixed, who, like, it was like all these things that were so
right?
important to what was a song and how the song was
Yes.
like perceived. That is like mummy dust. That's like
Yeah.
no one cares
Oh yeah.
who produced it. No one cares where it was mixed, how it was mixed. No one cares who the band shouts out in the liner notes and just like all these things. And that
Yeah.
was that was a really good time.
I mean, I dug into all that. That's how I picked, the who mixed the Snot album. That was one of these things. I go around and listen, and I'm like, damn, that sonically sounds good. Who who mixed that album? And that's how I found Phil Niccolo. He was doing this band out of Chicago called Big Chief at the time. I fucking rock Big Chief all the time, and I was like, damn, we could get that guy to mix. We fucking got it. Yeah, yeah, sounded good.
So, question. Um, Rest in peace, Lynn. If Lynn was with us today, would he have been canceled for being the rock and roll star that he was? He was a star. Matter of fact,
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, he was already at that point right before he did leave us with the incident he did in on the Ozzfest, and he just always was pushing the law. Lynn was testing. He liked to test people. He pushed them to the point of where they either be fighting him or loving him. But yeah,
I I
he,
know
he was
people
that
like that.
he was that guy.
Yeah, no, I know people like that. Either you
Yeah,
love them or hate them. Either or. There is
yeah,
no middle. There is no middle road.
yeah.
So tell me this: when you guys got on Ozfest, which was definitely a big deal, that was before all these chemically GMO festivals. Like that was back when a festival was a festival. Like that was back when you'd have a festival and people would travel from across the country. Like that's when a festival, like it's like now you have festivals every weekend or every other weekend or whatever, and then they throw all these bands together. And it's I won't say that it's not special. I'll just say that nah, they're not as special as they used to be. That's I could say that fairly,
Yeah,
you know,
true. Uh-huh.
fairly. So when you get the news that you're gonna play Ozfest, how did that happen?
It was I think Nick Adler came to us, and he was friends with the Osbournes, and uh they were interested in us. Yeah. Sharon was a big part of us being part of the Ozfest, and so was Ozzy too, and Lynn took to them immediately on that tour. He would go to Ozzy's dressing room every night. He would like had his fresh tattoo, and Ozzy would like, oh, let me see that. And he would put some saddle in Lynn's tattoo, and he'd hang out. He's like, I was hanging with Ozzy in the night, and at the time we were like, we were always trying to keep Lynn under control. And we were like, man, you better be cool. You're gonna get us kicked off this
You're
tour,
gonna
man.
blow it.
Yeah. And when he did that incident on the Limp Bizkit toilet, we thought for sure we were gonna get kicked the fuck off the tour. We were like, oh fuck, we're out of here. I remember I looked at my manager. When it was going down, he was standing on the side of the stage. He went like this. turned his head and just walked away slowly. And I was just like, oh. And fucking Sharon thought it was hilarious. You know, Lynn,
Oh wow.
yeah, the story, she's told it. They've told it on their show on TV a lot of times. But you know, he ran naked in her dressing room. She's like, hide in here. She was laughing, you know, and you know, so they loved it, and we were coined the naughtiest band of Ozzfest ever for that whole thing.
Dope. So
But yeah, we were very excited to be part of that at the time because, like you said, there was nothing like that, and we really knew that that was going to launch our career right there. It was special. To this day, that was the best tour I ever did with Snot.
so as we're winding it down, I want to give a shout out to Rob Boline. You know what I'm saying? He's mentioned a couple of cool things in the chat. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, he's a buddy of mine from my hometown. Yeah, it's actually Rob Boline. Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. I'm not the best with pronunciations. You know,
He asked me a few hours ago. He actually what time I was going to be on. So I was be 11 o'clock East Coast time. So it's good to know that he's on.
you know, um, knowing you from probably 2003 or so, I've never known the pronunciation of your last name. I've never even tried. Matter of fact, I have you on my phone as John F. I've kept it. Yeah, I've been known to butcher a name here and there.
Yeah.
Not my strong suit. So as we wind everything down, um, what would your biopic be called?
Man, that's a hard question. I don't know. Base face, maybe. I'm always known for being very animated on stage, and I make some bass faces. I don't know. That's just came out of blue to my mind.
All
Maybe
right, that's fair. And who would play you?
Oh, geez, gosh, I don't know. Ryan Gosling. I don't know.
Hey, just break me my 15%, man. Just break me my
Yeah.
15%, man, when you do this documentary. You know what I'm saying? I see it in the stars. So I'm gonna hit you with the last question. Um, us being able to have this virtual podcast go down right now. Since we're here, we made it through COVID. Um, COVID happened. You were in Colorado.
Yep.
I'm here in LA. I'm sure both places were turned upside down. A bunch of just chaos and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We went from like really being shut in, not being able to kind of move about to now like everything is just like wide open. It's like it almost even seems like it's more wide open now than it was before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see like social interaction going like from here on out? Do you think that it's gonna get crazier as far as people just like opening up and just going, or do you think people are gonna reach a peak and then they're gonna come back down? Because I know one thing that I noticed during COVID, uh, a lot more with the younger people than people our age and whatnot, but people really didn't interact with each other in person for for a while. It was more like everything was text message and just like, as a matter of fact, I've talked to younger people and they're like, I feel more comfortable text messaging than calling somebody. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard to get anybody on the phone anymore. You
Oh
know.
man.
Yeah. 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 People just like, oh, the phone's ringing. They go hide from it and shit. And like, fuck are you doing, man? Like, right? It's like, yeah, it's no, yeah, it seems like the human interaction is just, obviously we created this whole social media, everything to like be closer, but it seems to, in a way, it seems to pull people apart in a way that it's never been to. You know what I mean? In a way,
Yeah.
he's like, why should I why should I call you when I can text? Why should I go to your house when I can FaceTime you? Why? It's kind of like done the opposite in ways that I feel that we were trying to be more connected. In a way, it's kind of made us, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
tell people, I'm like, hey, I come from an era where we went to the mall and we had to talk to girls. Like, man, like we like we
Yep.
had to communicate. Like we had one on one. That is how you either moved forward or moved out the way. Like we had to communicate. But it
Yeah.
just seems like, people are, there's so many good, and I won't make this a conversation about that, but it's like I love a lot of things about technology, but I just really feel like we need the interaction. You know what I'm
I
saying? Like
I,
we
I
can't.
totally agree. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and even the children now, it's just like I wasn't going to school where you could have a computer. I carried books, now that everything's on a computer now. It's just like, and then, people are afraid. They don't let their children do the things, that I grew up riding a bicycle all around neighborhoods, and I leave and come home when the sun was coming down shit. But people now, they're like, man, I ain't leave my kids out there, it's like
Hey man. Well, it's a
it's
different world,
dangerous,
man. I think
complete different world. Yeah.
coming home on a two-wheel non-motorized uh
Yeah.
thing when the sun comes up, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's something else. So there's one thing that I didn't mention, and the Night Owl Dragon Man, uh he kind of threw it out there. Tell us about the band that you're in right now.
Oh, I'm in a band called Theptuous,
Yep.
and it is the guitar player from a band from early 2000s from London. They're called 1 Minute Silence. And we have a drummer who's playing drums now for a band called Osric Tentacles, which is a very tripped out hippie kind of band. And then it's myself. So there's two guys from London, myself here in Colorado, and then my singer was in a band back in around the 2000s who I toured with when I was in Amen, and he was in a band called Relative Ash, and his name's Mark Harrington, and lives in Wisconsin. So it's us four, and we started trading music, obviously, sending it around electronically. I took the music to a studio here in Parker, Colorado, and I did the bass tracks, sent it back to London. They had the guitars, sent it to our boy in Wisconsin. He has the vocals and all that, and pass it around. And we have an EP that's dropping next month called All I Deserve. And we've been dropping singles off that EP. It's a 6-song EP. We dropped 4 already, and you can find those on all music platforms at the moment.
So, well, nah, man, this was a dope conversation outside of our normal merch and printing conversations. And I will say this, man, uh you've definitely been someone that I've kind of looked up to with the way that you kind of revolutionized like the merch game from your vantage point. Like, man, I mean,
Yeah, thank you. Well,
you
I started my lifestyle brand, Kill Your Culture, in around 2005, and I've been doing that pretty much nonstop. I have a retail store in Manitou Springs, right outside of Colorado, at the foot of the Rockies by Pikes Peak, and I have a warehouse where I manufacture and I sell to probably like around 1,000 stores nationwide. So, it's something else I've always done beside music. I've always created merchandise for all these bands. I've always, even as far as in Snot, I would play a set, then I'd be back there slinging shirts after the show, meeting all the fans. Hey, buy a Snot shirt. I'd be that guy. That was always me. And I just stuck with it. And then when the music industry took a shit around 2003, I kind of stepped away from music a while, and I concentrated on this because you never know, man. You gotta pay the bills. You gotta get through life, And sometimes music, you know, I never did music for money. I always did it for the heart and for the song and for the feeling. That I never like did it for like fame or fortune. Um, you know, I did it more organically. I feel for the right things, honestly. So stepping into the merch world and everything, it's helped me have this beautiful home and move to Colorado and stuff like that. And now, you know, even to this day, I'm doing the Theftuous, and I'm doing it for the love of music. So I don't expect to be paid. I don't see any record labels kicking the door down like they were, you know, for Snot. It just don't exist anymore. And, you know, now we're making music and we're giving it away, you know. Back then, you know, you were looking at SoundScan to see how much money you made, how many records you sold. But now you're like, how many downloads? But even your downloads are not making shit. You know, you're making no money, but you still know that people are hearing it. And you're just hoping you can touch somebody in the heart, and that's the main reason I've always really done this, honestly.
So, you know, I'm gonna say this because I think I strolled across it in your on your socials, maybe Facebook. You got a koi pond?
Yes, I do. Yes. Yeah, I bought this home, and there was like a little ornamental pond in the back. I don't think they ever had life in it, so I was like, let's turn this thing on. Let's put some water in it. I started throwing fish in there, and they died. And I'm like, shit, what am I doing wrong? And you know, I probably went through like half a dozen fish till I figured it out. The pH, what you need to do, how to keep the algae from growing. You know, I'm still learning. It's like my fifth year with the pond now. I dug the hole deeper so I could have life without them freezing over the winter because I froze my first fish. They froze solid. And I'm like,
That's
now
not
I got it going. I got it going out back, and I like sharing that with people too. And then it's ironic too. My boy Shannon, like I brought him up a lot tonight, but he's got a massive koi pond in Cape Coral, Florida, and
okay.
it was like, wow, it's like how ironic. Now you have the koi pond, I have the koi pond, so we get together now and we talk koi.
You know, I had a Shark Tank
Oh shit.
for a while, small sharks, a couple hundred gallons, but I spent thousands on fish, man. Like
Yeah.
it went like I didn't know that certain fish didn't get along with other fish, and
All right.
I fooled around and got an ambush predator that looked really dope, and this Australian fish or wabagong, and you know it was probably like about a $400 fish. They sold it to me for $100, and you know I'm thinking I came up, I bring it to the house. The next morning, 4 fish are gone.
Right.
I
Right.
take
Yeah.
I take the wabagong back to the pet shop, and they're like, "We'll give you $50 for it. We don't rent fish." I'm just like,
We don't rent fish.
"Yeah, well,
Nice.
man, that's dope. Well, nah, dude, I appreciate the conversation, man. You know,
Thanks for
I interview rappers, comedians, just people that I feel are interesting that have a story, and it's more or less I want to hear where people came from to understand better where they are. So
Right.
I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. And
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it too, Greg. Yeah,
no,
man. And we go way back, and yeah, you know, you told me recently I got a podcast, and I was like, really? I'm like, fuck yeah, let's do this, man. Yeah, I enjoyed this immensely. Thank you.
all good. Well, no, man, I'll catch up with you in peace.
Yeah, and I'm looking for them slip mats too.
Oh, you know what? Give your socials.
Oh, all right. My
Where can people
Instagram.
find you?
Yeah, well, my personal social is Instagram, and it's at J Fahnestock 313. That's how you can find me there. And my clothing company is at Kill Your Culture, and that's pretty. You can track me down right there. I'm more of an Instagram guy than a Facebook guy, but I still they crisscross. They're owned by the same company, so you'll find me.
All good. All right, man. Thank